Hi everyone, welcome to my review of M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit in 2015. So here we are with yet another Shyamalan review, and yes, basically I watched this very shortly after, of course, After Earth, which I reviewed. It was my last review, of course, and yeah, basically I thought, you know what, I'll just watch The Visit, see what it's like, and then Split, I'll probably wait a week or so. Of course, Glass is coming out in January, so yes, kind of perfect, kind of pace that I've gone through them to kind of even them out, not leave a massive gap between Split and Glass, and also just, yeah, be able to kind of watch them, a couple of them quite close proximity, so I'm not kind of desperate to see the next one, of course, with the early ones mainly, and stuff, and yeah, so of course, coming near to the end of the series now, and yes, Shyamalan, of course, one of my favourite directors, when on form, and he has made some ones that aren't great, and this is one of the ones that many people say is kind of his comeback. I don't think he was necessarily always, overall as a filmmaker, always gone at these parts, but, compared to what he could have been and what he started out as, yes, of course, he had a dip. I'm pretty sure he would even acknowledge that, and of course, he then went back to making, kind of with Split, especially, kind of the films that he kind of wanted to make, and not these big films that big films that he didn't really, I didn't really feel, he was really there in this film, in these films like After Earth, even The Last Airbender. It wasn't his style. It wasn't what makes him unique, and kind of, yeah, I think Split was a return to that, an absolutely stunning film that I can't wait to review and rewatch, of course. The Visit is something I've never really, even of course I knew it was Shyamalan, and I hadn't seen The Last Airbender, around this time, and I hadn't seen Lady in the Water and all this, but I had seen After Earth, and I was just kind of, I thought, I'll watch The Visit eventually, but as well, found footage films, and I'll kind of say this now, I'm not a big fan of at all. I'm not even a fan generally really of documentaries. I mean, it's very particular documentaries that I would watch, only if I'm kind of obsessed with a particular film or filmmaker or something. But even then, I kind of, there's times where I'd rather just leave it to kind of reading up about and stuff. And there's times where I wouldn't even watch documentaries about some of my favourite films. I've seen quite a few things on Stanley Kubrick and stuff. But as I'm saying, documentaries aren't really the thing I get really excited for. Films are what I really love. And this is kind of a mixture between found footage and general documentary filmmaking, and it's kind of a very weird hybrid. But found footage films, I think actually, and yes, there's a kind of purpose. Everyone thinks that there's going to be more realistic, more immersive. Well, for me, actually, again, I actually think it's the opposite. When you're aware of this, it makes me more aware that I'm watching something, and I never get really as invested. I think the exception really would be Cloverfield, the first one. I haven't seen the other ones. I've heard one of them is meant to be really bad, The Paradox. But Cloverfield, the first one, I thought was actually a very good film. Very impressive. I did get invested. It was kind of comedy in there at times, but it was very good. And actually, yeah, I got invested in these characters, and actually the way they were shot was actually on that occasion quite effective, and actually it was very atmospheric, and it was kind of adventurous as well, and I did like that. But most of the found footage films I've not really liked. Even Blair Witch Project, I just don't like them really overall. Or if I do, I still think like I would just rather watch it as a normal film. There's just nothing for me really that it does. The film doesn't do. There's no way for me that it makes me more immersed. That's for sure. This film, then, in that sense, I wasn't, desperate to see, and even then, people have said, it's not a massive acclaim that this film's got, but people do say a lot of the time that it's one of the Shyamalan kind of return to form with, and I actually think The Last Airbender is not a bad film, despite what some say. I think it's mediocre. I think After Earth is bad. The Happening is, but very enjoyable, and Lady in the Water is fine as well. So I don't really think this period is as bad as what people say, but this film, I was kind of thinking I might not actually like it as much as some of these other ones, and I don't think I do. I don't think I like it as much as Lady in the Water, really, or The Happening, for my enjoyment. But I do think it's better than After Earth. It is a return, a step up again. It's kind of up and down this phase. It's not quite the bad stuff that consistently that people say for me. But yeah, I think I do prefer it to the the Last Airbender, and I do prefer it to After Earth. But really, it's not a great film. I think at the end of the day, it's an average film, and that's only because the final act actually was a lot better than the rest of the film. Now, this basically these two characters. This film is it's a weird mix, as I say. There's moments where there is normal establishing shots and other stuff where people are talking to the camera and stuff, but then it's kind of a weird mix between just documentary and found footage, and then just general filmmaking. It's very, very weird, but there is times where the kind of mix is fairly effective. But this film, it basically concerns these two kids, Becca and Tyler, and basically their mother, basically. So you see a thing at the beginning. There's a bit of exposition there, which was actually it was decent. It was human. It was kind of intriguing. And she kind of talks about her parents. So it's the kids' grandparents, and they basically. The premise of the film is they get invited to stay with the grandparents, the kids alone, which I'll get to in a minute. There's many logical things in this that don't quite add up for me at all. But yeah, basically they get invited to stay basically on this farm. It's quite deserted with the grandparents, these kids Becca and Tyler. And yes, basically the mother is kind of obviously the things are explained at the beginning a little bit. But yeah, the relationship is not great between them, which really gets me to my first thing. Why would she send them, to the grandparents without even kind of seeing them first and all this? And it is very weird, and the fact that first, when things start happening, she doesn't really question it too much. It is very, very odd in the way it turns out. But yes, basically, the rest of the film is kind of very, very weird shenanigans, of stuff happening in the house and around the house, the farm, the grandparents acting weird, and things happening there. And yeah, basically, the characters, you get to meet these characters. And yeah, basically, it is kind of a horror film, a thriller film, mystery, and yeah, of course, he uses found footage elements in there. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like a Shyamalan film, but yeah, I think overall it's a pretty decent film. I think Shyamalan does show some talent here again, and it's good that this was more successful. Well, certainly it was really, really successful. Of course at the box office and everything, the ratio of budget to kind of box office was really great. And yes, basically critically. It's not as much of a jump as you would expect, but generally critics did take to it a bit more than some of his past films, which is great for him, of course. And yes, I think it's a modest film. I don't think it's that great. We'll get to the flaws. The opening scene was really good, and actually, yeah, I think it set up the film well, and it added some humanity there, and it was kind of quite. There's a weirdness to this film, as in it was a bit staged, but then the opening did feel fairly authentic at times as well, and it was quite human. But then the first sort of half an hour after that, I didn't really like it. I think it was quite weak. These characters, Becca is okay, but then she has flaws. She's not that interesting, and the kind of she's apparently a kind of filmmaker and stuff. She. A film fan and all this, but it's very on the nose. It doesn't feel that real, really. It just feels a bit forced. The way she's mentioning things, and of course, very, very on the nose with Tyler when he's just this completely, and he's very, very annoying. That's the thing. He was such a bad character at first. I thought he was so annoying. Just really, really. Completely modern in all the worst ways, on the nose. This film a little bit at times feels like Shyamalan is really trying to cater to this. The kid, of course, raps all the time, and that's one of my problems as well. I don't think the rapping scene should have been in there. Really, really annoying and just stupid. It's really ludicrous what happens in this film early on with the rapping. Sort of take that out of the film. One of the train guys starts joining in and stuff, and it's mental, you know, it really is. It's just so off tone, and just I really got annoyed at that. Generally, Tyler, you know, for the first half especially, I really could have done without. Really, really annoying character. Oh, really annoying character. Honestly, I really did not like him, and just a very weak character as well. Overall, Becca was okay at times. She got better over the film, and you know, the final third we'll get to. But yes, basically, the grandparents, you know, they seem off, but you know, there is kind of a bit of humanity there, you know, kind of thing. Yes, things start happening. You know, they place the camera around the house, you know, just like in found footage films. And yes, basically you see things at night, and stuff. Weird things are going on. The grandmother, of course, bashes her head on different doors and stuff. You know, and kind of does very, very weird things. She starts scratching things, crawling around the house, running about, and yeah, it's very, very odd. You know, there's some odd moments. Becca, she doesn't quite believe things are happening. Something is really wrong at first. She just They keep saying this is the thing as well. It's very stereotypical. I don't know if he was trying to parody this. I never know, you know, with these films. But Shyamalan, he seemed like Becca was a very, very, you know, she just said they were old people. So that's how they act and stuff like that. That's the general the theme that the kids are seeing, at least seeing the old people as weird. And yes, you know, I can understand what Shyamalan was doing there, but it was just so on the nose and kind of quite frustrating, and a bit stereotypical to say the least. That it was quite annoying for me. And yeah, basically, after this, you know, things start escalating. You know, more and more mysteries arise, and actually, the characters do get better over time. And actually, you know, I think the last third of the film. Now as well, the cinematography I can't really comment on, because it is, of course, as this kind of thing is, mostly just them sort of moving the camera around. It's not really meant to be. I mean, I have heard he wanted to make it more like a documentary than a found footage, and have some, you know, beautiful shots and stuff. There's a couple of shots that are really good, but really, it isn't much to comment on because it's kind of just meant to be from their perspective, and they're not, you know, of course, meant to be, you know, Stanley Kubrick kind of thing with the camera. You know, it's kind of yes, it's very, very meant to be amateur the way it was filmed, and of course, it is more, you know, low key documentary, you know, throughout most of the film. But yes, overall, I think you know, the final third of the film is actually good. You know, that's the thing that brings this film up massively. You know, you've got a twist in there, you've got a lot of tension, a lot of drama, and very, very disturbing stuff. The performances, you know, are a lot better. I was invested in the film completely, you know, in the last third of the film, and actually it was very, very effective at times, and generally very, very solid final act to the film. And I think, you know, it was the last third really, and it's only a 90-minute film, so it did really bump the film up. You know, I was kind of worried at first. You know, the first third of the film really, it wasn't that good. It was weak, and then it started going up to kind of the mediocre level. You know, on the rating scale. You know, and then once the final third began of the film, and you've got that kind of twist, and then you've got things happening there. This is when the film picked up, and actually in the end I did call it an average film, and kind of. Yeah, I think you know, it's not really got any music in the film as well, which is interesting. You know, I do of course prefer music in film than kind of nothing or just a song here and there. But yeah, I think Shyamalan, for what he does, you know, what he's trying to do here is pretty effective with the tension. And yes, you know, I think the fact that he doesn't really include much music, and yes, he does. You know, achieve some atmosphere definitely early on, but really it's the final third where, you know, you get that very, very disturbing thing that happens, and then, you know, it really all changes, and actually, yeah, the twist is very, very good, really, really good twist there, Shyamalan, and kind of really, you know, something you do look back on the rest of the film and kind of see things. Oh yeah, you know, that's even more scary, and actually it kind of. You can see how certain things played out. It doesn't excuse, of course, for some of the bad acting, the kind of annoying characters, or the general kind of uninspired at times, you know, kind of cinematography, if you call it that. But yeah, I think this film, it really does pick up in the last third, and I did get invested. It was very, very thrilling. You know, as well, it is a scary film. He definitely achieved that. I think hats off. You know, he did. he did use make use of the found footage kind of genre, you know, to his advantage, and kind of he did achieve something with the atmosphere here. I was impressed with it overall with that sense. It is very scary, you know, as well. It's disturbing, you know, in that sense. It's not. There is some jump scares in there, which, you know, kind of range from a bit kind of cheap to pretty impressive, and then you've got the actual. Is this film really, really scary? In the fact that kind of disturbing, scary. Do you think about it afterwards, and kind of does it actually play on your thoughts in the way that, you know, horrors should do? And yes, it does. So yes, he achieved that for sure. And kind of, yeah, I think the script isn't great, but it is better than After Earth and kind of The Happening and stuff. So yeah, it's an okay script. Very flawed. The film is very, very flawed at times, but it's a decent film. It's okay. I'd have to give it a 60%. You know, so it's kind of it's not one of the better Shyamalans, that's for sure. You know, this has been said to be his comeback, and actually I think it's not really his comeback. You know, because I actually don't think a lot of the other ones are that bad. You know, I think he got a lot of unfair hate. You know, in these. You know, Last Airbender especially, that is nowhere near for me as bad as people say. That's mediocre, but it's not one of the 10 worst films ever made. Lady in the Water I did like, and I liked it more than this, probably. And yes, although very close, The Happening was very enjoyable, although bad. So yeah, I don't think it's like a massive comeback from apparently, you know, an awful sort of run of 5 or 4 films, maybe more than that. Some people say Signs is bad, you know, which I don't get, and The Village. Really do not get. So yeah, I think it is a decent film. You know, thumbs up from me for Shyamalan, and it's great, of course, that he came back. You know, in terms of success, and then he went on to make Split, which is really his comeback. That film is astounding. That film really, really blew me away, and cannot wait to review that. Of course, 2016, so the next year after this, and kind of. Glass as well, of course. I'm so pumped for that, and yeah, I think another film, you know, that I would give thumbs up to. I like it. So let's just do a tally there. I think there's been 2 films. No, well, really just the one film that I did not like. I disliked from Shyamalan, and that would be After Earth. The Happening, although bad, it's very enjoyable for me. And yes, The Last Airbender is kind of in the middle of me liking it and not liking it. I didn't mind it, you know. I think it is bizarre how this gets so much hate, The Last Airbender, but it is what it is. And yeah, I think Lady in the Water I liked as well. So really, it baffles me to how people say he's you know, he's had one of the worst careers, you know, in succession after kind of really Signs, or some people even say Unbreakable was bad. So yeah, I just think it's completely wrong for me, you know. Some people say about you know, Shyamalan. I think when on For Me, he's a great filmmaker, one of my favourites, and actually for me he's only really made 2 bad films. Certainly, you know, The Happening is very enjoyable. This film is okay. It's decent. You know, I don't think it's that great, but he does some interesting stuff, and for a found footage film, you know, it's decent. And yeah, it is very effective at times as a horror and a kind of human drama, thriller. And yeah, it's got some warm moments as well, kind of touching moments throughout. But really, it's the last third that kind of consistently was good. But you know, it's very, very flawed. Some annoying characters, some very, very odd moments. But overall, a very, very average, nevertheless an average horror film. You know, I think it's okay. You know, I think I would recommend it. And yes, another Shyamalan that I do like. But yes. Split is where, you know, things changed once again. So yes, thanks for watching my review of Shyamalan's The Visit.